Hello, everybody. Hope you all are having a great evening. Welcome to this week's live stream. Um, just a little bit. What I normally do is I let people come into the room. We have 15 people today, right now, at this point in time. Before I start, this one's a pretty quick, going to be a quick live stream. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what I'm going to do tonight. Last week, right before I logged off, when I said goodbye and my software was closing down, TE said, "Hey, can you do a video or a live stream on the advantages of being a citizen versus a resident?" And I saw that, but I couldn't say okay, or I couldn't respond to TE because my software was already closing up the live stream. So I thought it was a great idea because I've done a video on this before. I made a video on this previously, and this video that I made previously was about the advantages of residency over citizenship. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go over the requirements if you're interested in getting citizenship. First of all, what are the requirements? I do notice a lot of members in my Facebook group have parents that came from Mexico, have dual citizenship. So the first thing I'm going to go over is especially some of those that are eligible for dual citizenship. What do they need to do, first of all? And because, yes, their parents are Mexican citizens, but they qualify, but they don't know what to do. I'm going to go over that. I'm also going to go over what's required for Mexican citizenship. And then I'm going to go over the pros and the cons of having Mexican citizenship versus just being a resident. Because when I first came here, the advice was just stay a resident. And like I said, I'm going to go over all of that. Before we go over that, I just want to, I'm working on a video right now that I'm going to probably release tonight or early in the morning tomorrow. In Mexico, in the Puebla, Mexico, right outside of Mexico City, there's one of the largest volcanoes in the world, is actually active volcanoes, is actually outside of Puebla. Right now, the volcano is becoming a lot more active. There's over about 25 million people that live in and around that volcano. And this volcano, it looks like it may erupt. Actually, the civil protection services and agencies in Mexico are actually already issuing warnings. It's already up to a level 3 yellow alert. So let's keep those people that live in and around the volcano, and it's even affected Mexico City. They've had to close down close down the airport, but they've had to cancel flights in and out of Mexico City due to the ash, the volcanic ash. So let's keep those people in our prayers. And I just want to just say that before we go any further. So let's start with how do you get citizenship in Mexico? I think it's important because then we can go into the pros and the cons of citizenship versus residency. The first way to get citizenship, and this way is automatic. You don't have to wait any period of time. This is for individuals that one of their parents is a Mexican citizen by birth or naturalization. At one time, it was only by birth. Your parent had to have been born in Mexico. But I think in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, that changed. So if you have a Mexican citizen parent, one of your parents, one or the other, you can actually get Mexican citizenship by being the child of a Mexican citizen. Now, there's two ways to do this. The first way is to go to your Mexican consulate. You need to take your birth certificate, of course, your parents' birth certificate. And if your parent can actually accompany you to the appointment, that's also preferable. And if you do it at the Mexican consulate there, you have to have an official birth certificate from the county or wherever you were born, and even if you were born in the United States. And basically, you go to the consulate and you present your documents, and basically they will give you a national registry card, and they will also issue a passport. That's the fast way of getting your Mexican citizenship if your parents are Mexican citizens by birth. Now, some of you may have been born in Mexico, so you're a Mexican citizen already. But let's say you came to the United States, and let's say one of your parents was a U.S. citizen, so you have your U.S. citizenship, but you just never fixed up your papers for your Mexican citizenship. All you need to do is go to the Mexican consulate and with your birth certificate from Mexico, and you get your Mexican documents. So that's like the quick way of getting Mexican citizenship. Now, the second way of getting Mexican citizenship is by being a legal resident for 2 years here in the country. Now, the only way you can get it with being here 2 years, but you have to be legally in the country for 2 years. And with some type of residency, you have to be a legal resident for 2 years. And there's a certain criteria for certain people that can apply after 2 years of residency. The first type of person is a person that's married to a Mexican citizen. So if you're married to a Mexican citizen, you can apply after being in the country under some type of residency, under some type of residency legally, you can apply for Mexican citizenship. Now, you can also apply if you're a direct descendant of a Mexican by birth. So this is kind of sort of like not if your parents were Mexican citizens, but let's say your grandparents were, or your great-grandfather was. So you're a descendant of a Mexican citizen by birth. So like, for example, if let's say your parents came to the United States, or your grandparents immigrated to the United States, your parents were born in the United States, they never fixed up their citizenship. That's one way and your parents are passed away. Sometimes what a lot of people do is they tell their parents to get the citizenship, and then their parents get the citizenship, and then they get it through their parents. But let's say your parents have passed away. This is one way of getting it. You have to apply for it, but you have to have been here 2 years. Now, the next way is if you come from any place in Latin America or the Iberian Peninsula. That would be where Spain and Portugal are located. So that after 2 years, you can apply if you're from Latin America, which includes most of South America and Central America. And there's another way, but this way is kind of hard. You have to have done something outstanding, some type of outstanding service to the community. Maybe you're a businessman. Maybe you're the CEO of a company that brought many employees here. Maybe you're an artist that made Mexico famous. These are normally kind of things where you get an award, some type of outstanding award for being an outstanding giving an outstanding contribution to Mexico. Now, here's the deal, and here's the catch to the 2 year stay or getting it in 2 years. You have to take a culture and history test. All right. Now, if you're a minor or you're a refugee, you don't have to take the test. And if you're over 60, you don't have to take the test. So if you don't fit into those exemptions, you have to take a history and cultural test. Now, here's the thing about the history and cultural test. They can ask you anything about Mexican history and Mexican culture. Actually, I've inquired with a facilitator, and the study guide is over 700 pages long. They can ask you anything from when the IFE was founded to Cantinflas, when was he born, why do they call him Cantinflas, all sorts of different cultural or history questions. It's a 10 question, supposedly a 10, I think, or 20 question multiple choice test, and you have to get so many right. Then you have to pass a Spanish test. Now, here's the thing. Those individuals that are exempt from the cultural and history test must take the Spanish test. So you still have to show a proficiency in Spanish. And so you must show a proficiency in Spanish. So It's basically an interview. You speak in Spanish, and once you do your interview in Spanish, um, you will have to also take a written test. From what I understand, they show you a picture, and you have to write a couple of sentences on what you see in the picture. It's not that you need to know advanced Spanish, but you do have to know enough Spanish to communicate. And it's really up to the discretion of the person that's testing you. Now, for the rest of you, if you're interested in Mexican citizenship, you must reside in Mexico for at least 5 years. That's everybody else. Okay. And now, when you reside in Mexico, you have to reside as a lawful resident for at least 5 years. You also have to take the cultural and history test, just like the people, for 2 years. And you also have to take the Spanish test. And the same exemption applies. Basically, the exemption of being a minor, being a refugee, or being over 60. Now, the other thing that I didn't mention that's very, very important is that Mexico also has a requirement that in the previous the previous 2 years, or the years previous to applying, 2 years previous to applying, up to the date of your application, you cannot have left the country for more than 180 days. Now, this is kind of a weird catch, because I know I've mentioned about residency that there is no living in Mexico requirement. In other words, if you get temporary or permanent residency, just like in the United States, if you have permanent residency, if you're out of the country for more than 180 days, you lose that permanent residency, or if they can prove that you were. So it's not like that here in Mexico. If you have permanent residency, you could live outside the United States for 5 years and come back and you're a permanent resident. It doesn't go away. It's permanent. Or if you have temporary residency, you're still good. You don't have to be living here. But for Mexican citizenship, they will look at your entries and exits for the last 2 years. Usually nowadays it's in the computer. Your entries and exits should be in the computer. But if not, you take your passports with all your entry and exit stamps. So that's how you apply for Mexican citizenship. Now, I'm going to go into what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages. When I first came here to Mexico, I was really excited, and I said, you know what, I want to get Mexican citizenship just because I'm moving to Mexico and I want to be in Mexico. And one of the legal advices that I got was, one of the pieces of legal advice is like, why do you need to be a citizen? Why don't you just get your permanent residency? And once you're a permanent residency, you pretty much get the same rights as you do a citizen. As a matter of fact, even as far as if you want to own a gun, you can apply. It's very hard to do that, but I'm just saying it's not a lot different. The only thing is you can't vote. And one of the things that the lawyer brought up to me when he was talking about it, and I said, well, why not become a citizen? And, he actually brought up something to me that I was very familiar with, and I just didn't think about it. I was very familiar with it because I worked in that realm for a while. And also I had to do exactly what I'm going to tell you when I was working. But he said, when you're here on residency status, you have certain diplomatic protections. For example, if you're ever arrested, you have access to your consulate. Now, it doesn't mean that the consulate's going to get you out of trouble, but what it does mean is that the consulate, they have to notify the American consulate or the American embassy that you've been arrested. Anytime a U.S. citizen has been arrested here in Mexico, they have to advise the consulate, or you can actually ask, I want to talk to the consulate right away if you ever get arrested for whatever reason. And you are provided that diplomatic privilege. Now, here's the thing, and this is what he explained to me. If you're a dual citizen, Mexico recognizes your Mexican citizenship first. So in other words, even though you're an American citizen and you say, I want to talk to the consulate, Mexico has the right to say, too bad, so sad, you're a Mexican citizen. you're not an American citizen. You are a Mexican citizen first. You are American citizen. We recognize dual citizenship, but we don't have to contact your consulate. We don't have to give you consulate rights. And the embassy is not obligated to help you out if, for example, you're missing or anything else like that. So he pointed out a case. There was actually a case where there was an individual from Paris, France, that was a French citizen. She was a female. She was a girlfriend of a kidnapper they were running a kidnapping ring. And she was in the process of getting her Mexican citizenship. They arrested the kidnapping ring. They arrested her boyfriend, and they arrested her. And there was a big legal debate for the longest time. The French government kept saying, you need to release her, because she was claiming she had nothing to do with the ring, the kidnapping ring. And the French government was stepping in and trying to defend her and say, you need to give her back to the French government. She didn't have anything to do with this. And the Mexican government, because she was in the process of Mexican citizenship, was saying, no, she's a Mexican citizen. We don't have to give her to you. So what happened in the case, though, this eventually happened in the case, is that it was discovered that she was in the process. She hadn't become a Mexican citizen. So the argument that France used to get her back was that, hey, she's not a Mexican citizen because she didn't finish the process. So she was able to go home. And that's one of the privileges of having residency versus being a dual citizen. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, I'm not going to get in trouble. I don't have any issues. I'm going to the country as long as I'm not going to get involved with the drug dealers over there. The problem is that you run into, and I bring this up in my video that I talk about citizenship, is there are instances where you can get arrested. For example, if you're in a car accident, if there's an injury in the car accident, they automatically, no matter who's at fault, they automatically take you to jail. So, for example, in that case, if tomorrow I got in a car accident, the other individual's injured, they take me to jail, then I can actually say, I want to talk to the consulate. I want to see my consulate officer. And consulate protection, now here's the misconception about consulate protection. Just like in that case in Paris, France, they said, oh, they got her. I said they got her back. But the thing you need to understand is that they had an argument that she wasn't involved. It doesn't mean they're going to get you out of jail. But when you get consulate protection, what they can do is make sure that you're getting fed, make sure that you're not being put in a cell, make sure the conditions are being met under certain diplomatic regulations that they have to keep. And I know this very well because when I was working in the United States, anytime I'm arrested this is an international law. Anytime I'm arrested a Mexican citizen, I was required, or even a UK citizen or any citizen from any country, I had to advise the embassy or the consulate that that I had arrested them. This is a normal thing that I had to do. So this is not anything new. So there is an advantage to keeping your residency over being a citizen. Now, at the same time, there's advantages of being a citizen, and I'm going to go over those advantages because I think my views changed a little bit over the 5 years that I've been here, and I'm kind of waiting for the 60 years old because that cultural and history test, everybody says is very hard, and I'm 2 years away from being 60 years old. So I'm very seriously considering it myself, of becoming a Mexican citizen. But the first advantage is that, the reason why a lot of people are interested, a lot of expats are interested in becoming Mexican citizens is because there's laws that says that you cannot own property, beachfront property, within 20 kilometers of a beachfront or 20 kilometers of the border or 50 kilometers of the border. So therefore, now there's a way around that, but people would rather own their property. What people normally do when they live in Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, Mazatlan, Baja, they actually, when they buy their property, they get what they call a Fido Camiso. A Fido Camiso here is a land trust. So basically, what it's like and also the other way to own it is through a corporation, but that's less common. The Fido, it used to be you would establish a Mexican corporation, but that's not very common anymore. The Fido Camiso is now the easy way to do it. And basically, you own this trust through a bank, and it lasts for 50 years. And then you can renew it after 50 years. And you can also, your loved ones can also inherit it. You can also put it in your will, and it can be inherited. It's 50 kilometers from the ocean. I'm sorry, not 20. And 100 from the border. That's right. I'm sorry. Actually, what would I do without you, Brett? But the thing is that the Fido Camiso lasts for 50 years. You own the thing, but it's kind of in a land trust. So it's kind of like you own it, but you don't own it. You own it because you own the trust, and you have control over the trust, and you have control over the property. You can sell the property. You can do everything that you can do if you actually owned it. Now, I know a lot of people actually would rather own their property. They want to own the deed to their property. They don't want it in a trust. Okay. Oh, and actually, Adrian asked a good question. I'm going to bring this up now. I was going to bring it up I usually do. What happens to the trust if you die? You pass it to your heirs. That's the nice thing about the Fido Camiso. You can actually, your heirs can actually inherit the trust. So the trust gets transferred to whoever you leave it to. So there's a lot of argument that, if you have a Fido Camiso, you don't have to worry. I mean, it's the same as owning it. You own it, you control it. But there's some people that just want peace of mind, that I want the title to my house. I want to have the physical escrituras to my house. So that's one of the reasons why people look into Mexican citizenship. Another reason why people look into Mexican citizenship, and this is for the more wealthy, there's a big, large number of wealthy people that are renouncing their U.S. citizenship to avoid paying U.S. taxes. Now, here's the catch to that. Just because you're escaping U.S. taxes and renouncing your U.S. citizenship does not mean you're not liable for Mexican taxes. Mexico is also taxes worldwide income. Now, the thing with taxes, and I'm not a tax expert, but the thing about taxes that you got to remember, we have a tax treaty, the United States and Mexico, and I believe there's a tax treaty with Canada. I'm not sure. I'm not too familiar with the tax treaty, but if you pay taxes in one, you don't pay taxes in the other. There's tax credits that you can get if you pay it here. If, for example, if you're actually here, basically, and you actually have a Mexican job, you pay Mexican taxes, then you can actually, you have to report them to the IRS in the United States, but then you can get tax credits. It's, like I said, there are some catches to the taxing, but some people actually want a Mexican passport. And actually, it's not just a Mexican passport. It can be other international countries. There's a lot of wealthy people looking for passports for other countries and turning in their U.S. citizenship. Actually, Brett, I know Brett. Actually, Brett, I think you have a Fido Camiso. You live on the beach. So, Brett, I if I'm not mistaken, I think you mentioned one time that you lived in a condo on the beach, if I'm correct. But he would know a lot more about it. The Fido Camiso is initially issued for a 50-year period and can be renewed for another 50 years. I've never seen anything that discusses longer than this, but I'm fairly sure that you can keep renewing. And Brett Jones says, unfortunately, he does live on a beach. He has beachfront property. So in Mazatlan, actually, that's right, in Mazatlan. That's correct. As a matter of fact, if I recall. to be honest with you, I don't know about the other 50 years. I don't know if when it goes to your heirs, I don't know how it works. If the clock starts again, or if it gets renewed by, like, let's say you have 25 years left and the heirs get it and they get it for the remaining 25 and they have to renew it. I have no idea, to be honest with you. I'm not too familiar. I haven't lived close to the beach, so I haven't. I'm aware of the situation, and so that's basically the main reasons why you might want your citizenship. The other reasons that you may want your citizenship is that Mexico, you can travel to there's a lot of restricted countries you can't travel to with a Mexican passport. The first one that comes to mind, and a lot of Mexicans travel to, is Cuba. For example, if you have you can travel to Cuba as an American citizen, but I believe you need to get there. At one time, you couldn't at all, but at one time you couldn't, period. But now I think you can after the Obama administration, but I think you got to get some special permission. I have no idea. I've never tried it. But on a Mexican passport, you literally can go to Cuba. You don't need a visa. You just go to Cuba with your Mexican passport. And a lot of dual citizens do that. They come, they fly out of Mexico and go and they visit Cuba. There's other countries that it's a lot easier to travel with. There's individuals who like to carry several passports because they can travel to different countries. So that's another reason why people might want to become a Mexican citizen. The other thing that I'm considering it myself is that I don't plan on living back in the United States. There are some benefits to being a dual citizen, because I just pointed out what the benefit to being a Mexican citizen is, what the benefit to being an American citizen, but what's the benefit of being a dual citizen? I live close to the border. One of the benefits of being a dual citizen is that I can come in once I become a citizen. Now, if you're a resident, you never come in as a tourist. But when you're a dual citizen, you can actually come in as a Mexican citizen, or you can come in as a tourist. You can bring an American plated vehicle if you wanted to come in as a tourist. You have the option of coming in either way. So that's one of the things with dual citizenship. As a matter of fact, my wife had to give up her Mexican citizenship when she was working for the government because of clearances and stuff. And she had to come into Mexico as a U.S. citizen and get a FMM and everything, just like a U.S. citizen. And actually, one time we were stopped in the airport and they told her, well, where were you born? Because on your passport, it says where you're born. She had an American passport. And they said, well, why aren't you claiming Mexican citizenship? She said, I can't. And I'm just claiming American citizenship. Here's my FMM. So, later on, actually, now that she's retired from the government, she doesn't have to worry about her citizenship status. But those are some of the things. Now, being a dual citizen, like I said, you can come in either as a tourist, or you can come in, for example, let's say you want to bring your I don't know, you're a dual citizen and you want to bring your car in for a week, or you have a car in the United States you want to bring in for a week or two. You can actually come in, get an FMM on your American passport, and you can you can get a tip for a week. So those are some of and at the land borders, they're a little bit behind. 180 days is not guaranteed, but a lot of people that I lived on the Southwest Texas border. There's a lot of people that live on the Southwest Texas border that literally they'll go and they'll get, and this is the way we used to do it when we used to visit family. Instead of having to come in and get the tip every single time, we would get our 180-day FMM, and we'd get our 180-day tip, and then we would buy temporary insurance every time we'd come to visit Mexico. And we didn't have to worry about the car permission. We just had the 180 days. But here's the catch to the 180 days. You can only have a tip if you're on as a tourist up to 180 days in a calendar year. So my wife and I would switch back and forth. I would get it for 180 days, and she would get it for 180 days. Now that there's a lot of people down in South Texas that do that. They get 180-day FMM because they're dual citizens. They get 180-day FMM. They bring in their Texas plated vehicle. They get their 180-day tip, and they come back and forth to Monterrey every weekend or every 2 weekends. And that's one of the advantages that they have. Now, I'm going to start answering questions because one of the first questions that came up is Misty Tim. Would you keep your Social Security benefits with dual citizenship? Yes, you do. Actually, that's one of my, that's one of my, Misty Tim, that is one of my videos that I talk about. Here's the thing about Social Security. A lot of people don't realize your earned benefits on Social Security. A lot of people don't realize this, and I think it's kind of it's been a political thing. A lot of people say it's a handout. When you're paying into you pay Social Security tax. Okay, when you're working, you pay into Social Security. Basically, the idea is that you're paying for it's almost like a 401k in the sense later on for your benefit later on. What they do is they use your taxes to pay the benefit for the people that are on Social Security right now. So what happens is you earn that benefit. You could be a Mexican citizen. You could have been a Mexican citizen that worked in the United States as a permanent resident or you had a visa. If you get enough Social Security points, you are eligible for Social Security. It doesn't matter whether you're a U.S. citizen or a Mexican citizen or a dual citizen. If you earn that benefit, you can collect that benefit. And actually, you can collect it in Mexico. Believe it or not, there is a way of actually collecting it. They will actually deposit your Social Security in a Mexican bank account. There's a lot of people that don't like to. Now, there are some reporting requirements. You have to fill out a form every year. During COVID, they suspended it, but just this year, they started doing it again. And you need to make sure you fill out that form. I did a video on that. I'll place links to the video on what form you have to fill out if you do report a Mexican address. And that's just to let Social Security know that you're still alive, that they're not just paying anybody out. But you can collect your Social Security benefits. Now, here's the other interesting thing about Social Security benefits, and this is what I always get to. If you're on a Social Security supplement, for example, those people that don't qualify for Social Security, I don't remember what it's called, but you can apply for a Social Security, like, I don't know, it's like $500 or $600 a month. If you're on that, where you didn't earn your Social Security, but you're on that supplement or whatever they call it, you can't collect it overseas. The same thing goes with disability. There's two types of disability with Social Security, SSI and SSDI. SSDI is an earned benefit. SSI, SSI, Wilfredo, is what I'm just about to talk about, but there's also another benefit that you can get, or maybe that is a supplemental insurance. But if you're on SSI, and disability or the supplemental, you cannot collect it. The SSI, you cannot collect it overseas. So let's say you're disabled, but you're collecting SSI because you never got enough points to collect SSDI, then you cannot collect it in Mexico. Now, let's say you worked all your life and you got injured on the job, you had enough points, and you're on SSDI, which is earned disability benefits, then you can collect that in Mexico, just like you're collecting your regular Social Security. So, and Metabamba, I have multiple citizenship, and when I entered the U.S., I was told that I must show U.S. passport when entering U.S. and no other passport. Actually, Metabamba, yes, that's correct. Because here's the thing with, and actually this goes back to my customs and immigration experience. The reason why they tell you to show a U.S. passport, let's say, for example, you're a Mexican citizen also, you have a Mexican passport. And actually I don't know which multiple citizenship you have. You might have a citizenship where you can come in on a permission. The problem is if you come in on another passport, you're basically coming in as a visitor into the United States. So you're asking for permission to come in. If you're a U.S. citizen, when you enter in the United States, they cannot deny you entry into the United States. You're a U.S. citizen, Okay. So the reason why they tell you to show a U.S. passport and no other passport is because you don't need permission to go back into the United States because you're a U.S. citizenship. You're a U.S. citizen. And that's all they want to see is your U.S. passport. It's the same thing. For example, if I become a dual citizen, now here's the thing about the land borders. And actually, if I fly in, it'll be different. But the land borders doesn't have an immigration station. You have to actually kind of go to immigration. So if, for example, if I become a dual citizen, when I go to the United States, I'll show my U.S. passport card. When I come back into Mexico, and actually it's the same thing even with residency. When you come back into Mexico, you show your residence card. You're not showing but you have to show your U.S. passport with your residence card. Now, if I become a dual citizen, I'm going to enter Mexico as a Mexican citizen on my Mexican passport. I'm going to go into the line with the citizen. Now, with the exception of, okay, I want to check in as a tourist. And those exceptions are very rare. Like I said, the only thing I can think of is if you want to bring a vehicle in, you want to get a tip. So it might be convenient for you to come in on that passport, on the American passport. But so the Mexicans are going to want, for example, at the airport, there's no use for me if I'm a Mexican citizen, unless I'm trying, like I said, to get a tip. There's no reason for me to not come in on my Mexican passport because I don't need a permission to come in. I'm a Mexican citizen. So that is the reason, Metabamba, where they told you that they only wanted to see a U.S. passport. Because if you showed another passport, let's say you're from the U.K., which doesn't require a passport, but they still need to give you a 90-day or 180-day, I think it's a 90-day permission in the United States, I think is the maximum stay or that they'll issue. You still have to get a permission. So if you came in on a UK passport, they're technically issuing you a permission that you don't really need if you're a U.S. citizen. And there's really no reason not to come in on a U.S. passport if you're not a U.S. citizen. And there is a big, now the regulations say you need a U.S. passport to enter. You do need a U.S. passport to enter, but the one thing is, even though you need a U.S. passport to enter, if you really are a U.S. citizen and you can prove you're a U.S. citizen, you'll probably be detained and it'll take a while. But if you can prove you're a U.S. citizen, they can't deny you entry into the United States. That's the bottom line. But the best way to get in is to have a passport, because if you don't have a passport, trust me, you'll be sitting detained for a long period of time until they can determine that you're a U.S. citizen. So with that being said, any questions? I always leave the end for some questions. Okay, Randall Keller, do you know the requirements are for a permanent resident leaving Mexico with the immigration office at the airport? Here's the interesting thing, Randall. I'm going to give the answer that I always give with everything Mexico is it depends. The reason why I'm saying it depends is in the old days, and what I mean by the old days is that Mexico has automated their FMM system. Now, here's the thing with the FMM system. Some places are still especially the land borders, are still utilizing the paper FMM. Most of the airports, if not all, have actually converted to this electronic FMM. When you come into the country, now you used to have to fill out a form saying, I want permission to come in. You would take the form, you'd present it with your passport. And when you present it with your passport, you would say, I want 180 days, I want 7 days, I want 14 days. They would write on it 14 days. You would have to keep the bottom portion. You would have to keep they would take one portion and you would keep one portion and you would keep it with your passport. Then when you were leaving, you would actually hand that in to the airline. And the airline, basically, that's how you would board the plane. Okay. That's basically how they would record your exit and you would board the plane. Now, here was the thing with residents. Well, I never filled out an FMM coming into the country. I'm a resident, right? I'm leaving the country. So the old method used to be that before you leave, you would have to report to the INM office and you would fill out an FMM, but it was in reverse. Instead of keeping the bottom portion, you would keep the top portion. They would write this big RT or PR for permanent, RT for residente, RP, I mean, residente permanente. They would write the RP on that form. So when you would come back in, you would present the FMM with your card and your passport. Now, that has changed because they're no longer using the paper form. Some airports require that you still report to the immigration office so they can put your exit in the computer. And then what they'll do is they'll write on your passport, they'll stamp your passport, and they'll write the word salida. And then when you come back into the country, you present the passport stamp and your resident card, and they will scan your resident card and you get stamped and it'll say entrada. So that's the way most places are doing it right now. But what's happening is this system is evolving over time. It's been going on for a while now. Now, the airline system is incorporating their reservation system into the immigration system so that you can do it at the ticket counter. So basically, when you go to the ticket counter, you show them your permanent resident card, they will automatically put it in the computer and it'll automatically go to INM and say that you exited the country. And then when you come back in, you just show them your permanent resident card and you'll get your passport stamp. Now, some airports, depending on which airport you leave, you know what? I've quit keeping track of which airports do which procedure. What I would do, make sure you go to the airport early. And then what I would do is check in with the ticket counter and tell them you're a permanent resident, you're leaving, you're going back to the United States. Do I need to go to the immigration office? And if they say, no, we take care of it here, then not a problem. They'll take care of it right there. You check into your airline. If not, you have to go to the immigration office and check out. I know several airports are still doing the old process where you have to actually go get your passport stamped and you have to check out at the INM office. So that's the requirement, Randall. Depending on where you fly out of. And that's always been my advice. Go to the ticket counter first and ask them if they're automatically doing it or not. And then if they're not, then you need to go to the immigration office and check out. But it's a quicker process now. You don't have to fill out the form. If you are over 60, when you apply for citizenship and from Spain, Iberian Peninsula, not sure why you would need to prove that you know Spanish. It's a requirement, Merabamba, even if you're from Spain, it's a requirement that, and actually if you're from the Iberian Peninsula, you can do it if you're over 60, yes, and you can do it after 2 years of residency. You're exempt from the cultural and history exam, but you got to show proficiency in Spanish. I know it makes no sense that if you're from Spain, you already know Spanish, but that's a requirement for everybody, unfortunately. And Wilfredo, different subject. Are you living in San Miguel de Allende or Monterrey? Actually, Wilfredo, I'm in Monterrey now. I still have my house in San Miguel de Allende. We're building a house in Monterrey. So I'm in between, but our home base is going to be actually in Monterrey now. And we've been building for a year now, but we should be moving into our new home pretty soon, hopefully by the end of the month. Ernie, I had posted a question before the live stream started. Did you see it? It isn't here now. Actually, Angie, this is the live chat, and I know a lot of people get. I didn't see the question posted in the live stream. If you want to post it again, I can try to answer it. The problem is, and I actually have people say, "Hey, where did my question go?" when they ask it here, and then whenever the video, like the follow-up video, that's why I put the chat up on the side so people can kind of keep track of the chat, because I lose the chat whenever the replay goes on. So if you could actually repost that question, I'd appreciate it, Angie. let me see here. And Brett Jones, there are new fast track machines, at least in Ciudad Mexico, that are only for tourists entering Mexico. If you're a resident, don't use them. Yes, actually, I did a video about that, Brett. I don't know if you remember, but I did do a video about that. Do not use the kiosks. Do not use the kiosks. They're in Cancun. They're in Ciudad Mexico. They're in several areas. Actually, they were actually installed in Mexico City before they were even operational. But here's the problem with those fast track machines. Those fast track machines are for tourists only right now. Now, there is going to be a trusted traveler program. Actually, there's even a website you can go to where they're talking about the trusted traveler program. Mexico hasn't implemented it yet. Supposedly, these kiosks are supposed to work with the Trusted Traveler program. It's kind of like, I guess, Global Entry in the United States. I don't know if there's a Canada equivalent, but in Global Entry, what you do in the United States, you can apply for this Global Entry card, and then basically, you don't have to go through customs, well, you don't, unless you get selected, but you basically go to a kiosk, you take your card, you put your Global Entry card in there, and you basically, it takes all your data. But in order to get the Global Entry card, you have to go through criminal history checks, all sorts of stuff. Well, Mexico's going to establish a program just like that. So eventually, not right now, but eventually you'll be able to go with your permanent residency card or this Trusted Traveler program card. I even don't know how it's going to work, but you can go through those kiosks. And actually, even tourists that pass this Trusted Traveler program are going to be able to just go through the kiosk. They don't even have to go through the line and go through an immigration officer. So, but those kiosks right now are only set up. So and here's the thing that I always warn people, especially what Brett said, don't use it. They're only for tourists. If you are a resident and you get checked in as a tourist at any point in time, you will lose your residency. The minute you check in as a tourist or the minute you use your, like I said, when we were talking about dual citizenship, let's say you're a resident and you say, oh, I want to get my tips, so I'm going to come in as a U.S. citizen, I'm going to get an FMM. You use your U.S. passport, you get checked in as a U.S. citizen, you're not a dual citizen, you're a resident, you get checked in, you will lose your residency. So that is very important to remember and very important not to use a kiosk at this time. I will come out with another video if it does in fact is confirmed that you can use the kiosk, but don't use the kiosk. And a lot of people have done that, and actually they've had to go back to the immigration office and say, hey, I got checked in as a tourist, and can you please correct it? And I know that people have been able to correct it by going back like the same day or an hour later. But I heard it's very hard to correct if you find out later on, like let's say you're renewing your residency and you find out, hey, back in 2010, you basically, or they check your card. Now they have a way of scanning your card and they check you in the computer and you're no longer a resident. Then you're going to be very surprised. And Angie, I don't have a way of checking the question. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can go onto YouTube here. And let me see if I can see comments here. No, I can't see comments. So I don't know if you can repost your question, Angie. I'll give it a little bit longer here. And if not, that question should still be on the comment section whenever I wrap up the stream, and I'll try to answer it the best I can. Any other questions? Let me just shout out to a couple of people that said hello. Kai from Michigan, Angie from DFW, Profe from and Wilfredo, Cindy Kawa is here, Alejandra, Edith Jones, Retribution. He finally made it live to a live stream. Like to to thank you guys for supporting the Traveler 444, Randy Keller, that I answered your question, Mexi Madison. If I haven't Metabamba, like I said, thanks for supporting the channel. Any other? Okay, Angie, I'll try another time. I think you have my email, Angie, from before. You can also email me the question, and actually, if it's in the comments, I'll get to it as soon as I wrap up the stream and answer your question. And also, the other thing too that I want to mention, a lot of people are going to say, oh, okay, well, one of my parents is a Mexican citizen. What do I need to do? If I want to go to the consulate and I want to do it here in the United States, what you do is you make an appointment. The Mexican consulates have a section for Mexican citizenship services. Don't make an appointment. Don't make an appointment. This is very important. Don't make an appointment for residency, because you're actually making an appointment because there's different sections of the consulate. What you need to do is make an appointment for Mexican citizen services. They have a section that caters to Mexican citizens. Then that's the place where you go to actually get your paperwork done for your citizenship. Okay, and then also, I'm a permanent resident. What if I want to fly to U.S.? What's the process? Stephen, what I was just saying right now, the process is you want to fly to the U.S., and like I said, it depends. Whatever airport you're flying out of, some airports, they're already integrated into the ticket counter. Other airports, you still have to go to INM. You have to check out of the country, basically. That's the bottom line. When you fly out, you have to check out, and then you have to check in. They do this for tracking purposes. Now it's automated. Now, if you go to the INM office, they're just going to scan your passport through the computer. They're going to passport stamp, and they're going to say it on the salida. Then when you come back in, you're going to get a passport stamp, and it'll say entrada. Or here's what happened to another individual. They put a date on the passport, but they put RT, which meant residente temporal. So that meant they checked him in as a resident, temporary resident. Now, if you are at an airport where it's actually with the ticket counter will take your residency card and enter it into the computer. So the best thing to do if you're leaving is go early, because if you have to go to the immigration office, go early the first time, at least the first time that you know the process. And you go to the ticket counter, say, look, I'm a permanent resident. I need to leave. Do I need to go to INM? If you do, they will direct you. Go to INM and check out. If not, they'll say, not a problem. We'll do it for you. And I've heard, like I said, I haven't kept track of what airports are doing which. I do know, I've heard of experiences from both sides. Some people that have gone, and actually some people that have gone INM, and they're just like, we don't do that anymore. You just go to the ticket counter. Other places, hey, we already do that. You don't need to go to INM at the ticket counter. So the best way to find out is go to the ticket counter, because the ticket counter will tell you, we'll take your card. The truth is, they won't let you board the plane unless you've checked out. And that's the old way that's why you used to have to fill out an FMM. So they won't let you board the plane unless you've checked out of Mexico. So the best thing is to go to the ticket counter first, but go with plenty of time in case they tell you to go to report to INM. I think that very few offices, it's getting incorporated more and more into the system. So it's one of those things that you can actually, it's one of those things that eventually is going to be automatic. You just show them your resident card when you leave, and you show them your resident card when you come in. That's how automatic it's going to become. And it says, wait, I thought you could come in as a tourist if you want to bring in a vehicle as a resident. Yes, you can. As a resident, you can bring in a vehicle if you're a temporary resident. And you can't come in as a tourist. You're coming in. Here's the thing with, you can't come in as a tourist if you want to you can come in as a tourist if you want to bring a vehicle if you're a citizen. and you're a dual citizen. But as a resident, you don't come in as a tourist. As a resident, you get your tip for the period of time of your temporary residency. As a permanent resident, you can't get a tip. You can't bring a foreign vehicle. You cannot. Actually, matter of fact, you're not supposed to even be driving a foreign plated vehicle if you're a permanent resident. So, when I'm talking about coming in as a tourist, that's a special case scenario. That's a special case scenario for dual citizens, people that have Mexican citizenship. There are a lot of people that have Mexican and American citizenship here on the border. So what they do is they come into Mexico as a Mexican citizenship, or they come into Mexico as a U.S. citizen as a tourist and get their 180-day permit so they can bring their Texas plated vehicle in. So that's, I hope I clarified that. I don't want anybody coming in. You don't come in as a tourist. If you're a resident, never come in as a tourist, ever. Okay, Metabama, can you trust a ticket counter to actually report your exit? What if they mess up and you don't have a stamp in your passport? To be honest with you, Metabama, I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know if the ticket counter is actually stamping your passport. I just know that they're taking care of it. I don't know if they make a note in your passport and they stamp it with the airline. I'm just aware of the process because when this first started, to be honest with you, it's a confusing process because it even confused a lot of people because there was only like 5 airports that were doing this at the beginning. They were giving out an automatic 180 days. Now they're not necessarily giving out 180 days. They're giving out 180 days at some airports. Some airports it's automatic 180 days unless the computer catches that you've been doing multiple entries. It's a big, to be honest with you, it's kind of a mess right now. So it's kind of hard to see what, I can't tell you, to be honest with you, it just depends what airport you're flying out of. Brett said that he's going to be flying out in a few days, probably out of the Mazatlan airport, and he'll let us know. If you can post, Brett, to the actual to the live stream comments. Okay. Adrian says in Monterrey Airport they are stamping it at immigration right next to the ticket counter in the Terminal C. Okay. Ernie Gillison, ticket counter at PBR. They don't stamp passports. You fill out the top part of an FMM form, and I guess they turn it into immigration. So I guess that's how Puerto Vallarta is handling it. You're actually filling in the top form, and they give it to immigration. Then immigration enters it. What I would do is keep that, whatever the other portion of the form, write TR or PR on it, or TR, RT, or RT, or RP, and make sure you save that bottom portion. And when you come back in, you have that. Not that it's not easy. They probably already have you in the computer when you come back in through PVR. But and here's the other thing too. It's really weird because what if you check out on one airport and don't get a stamp like PVR, but then you fly into Cancun? How do they handle that when they don't see a salida stamp? It should be in the computer, but what if they don't enter in the computer? I really don't know. To be honest with you, right now it's in a state of flux. To be honest with you, I've heard 20 million different stories. As long as I think you can prove that, I mean, hey, you know what? Hey, I checked out in Puerto Vallarta. This is what I did, and this is my bottom portion or whatever portion of the FMM form they give you back. I guess Puerto Vallarta is doing it because they don't have it into the computer yet. Some people are saying that they don't even fill out an FMM. Other people are saying they fill out an FMM at the ticket counter. Other people are saying they actually have to go to immigration. So right now, what I would do is just go to the ticket counter and ask them, what's the process? One thing that is important to note is the way, this is what they do. What people don't understand the land borders are a lot harder, but you know how I said they can't deny entry to a U.S. citizen when coming back to the United States, right? But then they also require that you have a passport. Okay, one of the ways that one of the ways that customs make sure that you have a passport when you're flying in is because the airlines get fined if they let someone on the plane, or they can get fined by the Mexican government by not checking you out. So they have to do their due diligence. That's why whenever you go to the airport, the airline collected your FMM because they won't let you board the plane without collecting your FMM. Well, it served two purposes. Number one, the Mexican government made sure their exit was documented, right? And number two, they didn't get fined. Number three, you had to have a U.S. passport to have actually gotten a U.S. FMM, so that guarantees when you go back to the United States, you're going to have your U.S. passport when you present it in customs. And number four, they won't get fined by the U.S. government for you not having a passport. So it is in the airline's best. Metabamba, it is in the airline's best interest to fill that out. Or to make sure it gets handed in. That's why CBX always bothers me. They used to do nothing with the FMMs. What if you're leaving there and you fly back to Mazatlan? It's scary. Yes, it is scary, Brett, because, and actually in the old system, when they didn't have anything on automized, basically the FMMs just went into a big box and then it went to a warehouse. That's what a lot of people don't realize when with this visa run thing, a lot of people were saying, well, they always give me 180 days. There was no way because there was no way of tracking, because basically you filled out an FMM, it went into a box and then it went to a warehouse. What has happened since is when they computerized their systems, they actually took those boxes, believe it or not, warehouses full of boxes, and scanned all those FMM. That was part of their modernization. Now, what happened to if they scanned every single one? I can't tell you if they did, but supposedly they have a travel history of a lot of people now, even after the FMM went nowhere. But how good that travel history is, heaven knows. And Brett has a good point. If you're a resident, you don't need to pay the visitor tax to the airline when flying into Mexico. The airline will automatically charge this, so you have to request a refund. Yeah, that's very important. Brett has a point. There's a visitor tax, and actually that's what the charge is for your FMM when you come in. If you come in on a land border, they'll charge you a certain amount of money for your FMM, depending on your stay, and that's actually built into your plane ticket. And that's something that you have a right to refund. And they'll want a photocopy of your residency card. Kai, Delta makes you pay a visitor tax if you're a temporary resident. Delta says you have to be a permanent resident to not pay the visitor tax. I don't know why. They shouldn't be charging you the visitor tax, because a visitor tax is actually for your 180-day FMM, basically. That's what you actually, Delta's probably wrong on that. I would probably maybe talk to someone in customer service, Kai. The only problem you have with the American Airlines, they kind of make up their rules. I would tell them that you want to talk to a supervisor, because that visitor tax, the truth of the matter is, and Brett brought that up too, Delta's wrong. Tell them that you want to talk to a supervisor. The visitor, here's the thing. And I'll explain it to you. When you come in on a land border, for example, when I used to come in on a land border and I used to say, I want 180 days on my visa, on my FMM, not my visa. I call it a visa, and I already talked about this last week, why I call it a visa. But I want a 180-day FMM. So they would say, okay, that'll be 400 pesos or 300 pesos. I don't even remember how much it was. I mean, it's been such a long time, I don't remember. And your first 7 days, how long are you going to stay? Well, for the first 7 days, it's free. But after that, it's a certain fee. And then I'd have to go to Banjercito, which was right there, and I'd have to pay the 300 pesos or the 400 pesos or through Banjercito, or I could pay in cash. So that is your fee for your tax for coming in for your FMM. So what the airlines do is they automatically charge you that, because when you come into immigration, they don't ask you for 400 pesos. They don't ask you for $5. They don't ask you for $10. It's automatically built into the airline fee. So what you're paying for with that visitor tax is for your FMM. That's basically what you're paying for. So if you're a resident, you don't need an FMM. You're not paying a tax to come in to visit. Then there's no reason why you should be paying that. And then RA said a lot of airlines just refuse to refund. Even Aeromexico does it. Yeah, you know what? I'm not too familiar with the way a lot of airlines work, but I think the technicality behind it, like I said, the legality behind it is they shouldn't be charging you. That's the bottom line with the whole thing. And Brett Jones says he's always gotten a refund each time airline has a department for refunds. They all know that they have to issue a refund. Maybe Brett, I don't know if you could mention this. If you do it through the customer service or you do it right there at the ticket counter, maybe there's a difference between calling customer service and saying I want a refund. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But we're coming up. I like to keep it to about an hour. We've gone over a couple of times, but I want to thank you guys for all coming. Let me see, what else, what do I have planned? I have an alert coming on the volcano, a little bit of video coming on just on the volcano. I know it doesn't affect a lot of people in Mexico, but it's going to be affecting the people in Mexico City probably, and Puebla. And so, we should keep our prayers out for those people. And I also have 2 interviews coming. And actually, Brett Jones says he calls customer service and goes through the process of getting the right person. And I also have an interview with Chasing the American Dream. I haven't forgotten about them. I've already taped their interview. I also have an interview with Bill the Geek from Bill Dallas Lewis from Mazatlan, actually, who's a YouTuber out of Mazatlan. And that's about what I have wrapped up. And if you have some suggestions for next week's live stream, drop a line on the comments to this live stream or in the Facebook group. I'm always up for brand new ideas, and we'll see you next week. I think next week I should be in town next week. The one weekend I'm going to be out of town, but we'll see you next week. And thanks for your support, and we'll see you soon.